Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today I was doing some research, photo research, at the National Portrait Gallery's website, and it's a great place to go. It's not as well known a destination as the Library of Congress, who famously owns the significant number of glass negatives of the Matthew Brady collection. Still, the National Portrait Gallery has a great number of Brady images plus other photographs. While I was there, I stumbled across this image. It's an antebellum portrait, as you can see, of a man with a beard. And I was taken aback when I saw the identity in the caption. He's one of the individuals who shaped the way you and I and Americans and folks around the world visualize the Civil War. He helped us visualize it not because his work behind the camera's lens, but with pen and ink and paper and canvas. He is one of the foremost war artists from the Civil War. If you don't recognize him from this image, I'll share another one with you. This one comes from the Library of Congress. You can see him with a longer beard. Now he's got a mustache and he has his sketchbook and his pencil. If you're still stumped, take a look at this one. This, I dare say, is one of the iconic images of the Civil War. You can see this artist sitting here perched on a rock with his sketch pad and pen. He is Alfred Rudolph Waud or Woad, spelled W-A-U-D. I've heard it pronounced both ways. Truly one of the great artists of the war period. He was born in London in 1828 and rose to fame during the Civil War for his vivid, realistic depictions of various scenes of battle, of devastation, of soldiers in camp and elsewhere across the South. As I was doing some research, I went down the research rabbit hole to learn a little bit more about him. One of the favorite lines I came across was from one writer who recalled the many soldier boys that would recall Woad's initials on his artwork, and it reminded them of the war scenes. Of course, all of those images appearing, or I should say, many of those images appearing in the top illustrated news magazine of the day, Harper's Weekly. It seems appropriate that I should share a few images of his sketches. They're so fluid, really capturing various moments. And I also want to share a few of the engravings that were made from those sketches that appeared in Harper's Weekly. All of the images I'm about to share with you appear in the Library of Congress collection. So let's get started with a little portfolio of Waud's work. Here's this first one. You can see the battlefield scene. This is Colonel Ambrose Burnside. We're looking at the first battle of Bull Run or Manassas. We can see the fields running into the distance, that line of battle, the smoke, the gun smoke coming from the cannons. It certainly has a realistic feel about it. Now we move to Antietam. We're seeing a sketch here of Mama's Farm, which was burned during the battle. You can see the burned out walls of the building. You can see the walls of flames surrounding the house and the field, the soldiers in the foreground, the smoke billowing, the dark smoke billowing across the battlefield. Moving into 1863, here's another image. This is General John Reynolds, who was killed. He was shot down in the earliest part of the battle. Some believe that he should have been the commander of the Army of the Potomac. Of course, it was never realized due to his untimely and sudden death at the head of his troops. Now, moving into 1864 and the Overland Campaign, here's an image from the wilderness. You students of the Civil War know how the fire was ignited, various fires ignited in the dense woods, the scrubby brush and trees, creating a catastrophic situation for wounded soldiers who could not escape the flames. In this case, a dramatic scene of Union soldiers coming out of the burning forest with, we assume, is a survivor in a makeshift stretcher. One more image I want to show with you. This is Spotsylvania, another one of the engravings showing the attack on the Mule Shoe Salient, where the Confederates were well entrenched. Of course, Spotsylvania being an inconclusive battle. So back to Woad. He died relatively young in 1891, and I found this brief obituary that gives you a little bit of some details about his life, a couple interesting notes. So let me share it with you now. Quote, Mr. Woad was nearly 64 years of age at the time of his death. He was born in London and, after receiving a thorough education in art, came to this country when he was about 30 years of age. He was one of the early exhibitors at the National Academy, though not himself an academician. His pictures were ideal heads and landscapes with figures after the English style of the day. He has not exhibited for 15 years. He is best known as an illustrator in black and white, a branch of art of which he was one of the first in this country to pursue exclusively, contributing to Balfour's Weekly in Boston and afterward to Harper's, Frank Leslie's, and other publications. Mr. Woad's war sketches in recent numbers of the Century, it's part of the Battles and Leaders series where the veterans, a quarter century after the war, were making their cases for who won, who was right, who did wrong, all those different items. Mr. Woad's war sketches revived his name and his fame. He traveled with the army and was a personal friend of Grant, Sherman, and other generals. He was at work on a series of war pictures for a weekly newspaper and had intended to travel through the South and revisit the old battlefields. End quote. That next to last line about him being friends with top generals grabbed my attention. I went to the memoirs of Grant and Sherman, hoping that I might find a reference to Woad, but alas, I didn't find one. I was also struck by that last line about Woad, quote, was at work on a series of war pictures for a weekly newspaper and had intended to travel through the South to revisit the old battlefields, end quote, left me feeling a little bit sad. But though he was never able to realize the dream of going back to those battlefields and maybe perhaps leaving us with some new works of art, Woad did leave behind an enormous volume of artwork that's baked into our American memory, along with the works of many other great war artists of the time, including Winslow Homer and Thomas Nast. So thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.